Hey guys, Matt Schmidt here, also known as DJ Skitty. We're coming to you live from Miami Shores, Florida. And I'm here with Richard from Aficionado, and we're gonna show you my tanks. All right, we can talk a little bit about my 80 mixed reef system first. This tank actually started out as a Caribbean specific only biotope, because I had a 90-gallon mixed reef that had Australian, Indo, Vietnamese, stuff from the United States, Hawaiian. I already had a mixed reef. When I decided that having 4 systems became too much, it was too much work. I was working on fish tanks all day, and I wasn't really enjoying the fish tanks. So when I decided it was too much, it only made sense to consolidate down to the 80 peninsula. I just happen to like peninsula style tanks a lot better than the standard 90 tank setup, because you have 3 viewing panes or panels versus on a standard 90 with an overflow, you basically get 2 viewing sides with maybe a third of that remaining third side open. So to me, this just made it, for someone that has as much coral and pieces as I do, you could place them all around the tank and utilize every bit of space, the back side, the front side, the floor. That's why I decided to go with the shallow 80 rimless. I also like looking top down at corals. I think that's one of the most underappreciated views, because a lot of these tall tanks, you never really get a chance to look down at the corals, how they actually grow out when they're facing the sun. So this gives me the ability to not only view from the side, but also to view from the top. I went with a much larger stand because this system houses a lot of equipment in the sump area, which we'll show you. But I run a 40 breeder, a modified 40 breeder tank with baffles as a sump. And I run a Reef2Reef denitrifying setup. I also have 3 reactors, one with raw phos, one with carbon, and the third is actually sitting empty at this moment. I was going to run some sort of bio pellets, but being as that I'm running the denitrifying setup, there's no need for that extra phosphate and nitrate removal. I don't want to strip the tank completely barren, or you start to really notice the LPS suffer, the polyps suffer, and this is a very much a mixed reef. I mean, you have LPS, you have SPS, you have polyps, you have corallomorphs, you have anemones and mushrooms, and I really wanted to go for the most mixed reef I possibly could. Basically, anywhere crazy coral comes from that we can legally collect it, I wanted a piece from there. So this tank is kind of the epitome of my collection. I'm not a big fan of the frag culture, as in people buy a frag, wait till it spits out a nub and completely decimate it just to try and make another frag to make money. This tank is basically the untouchable tank. Once I put a frag in here, until it's a full colony, and when I say colony, I mean the size of your fist, it's not going to be touched. So this is kind of the untouchable tank. And then I have my second system, which is actually connected to the main system. It's a 30-gallon deep blue frag tank. And so between the 30-gallon frag tank, the 80-gallon rimless, and the 40-gallon breeder, we're working with about 150 gallons of water, give or take, with the rock volume. The more water volume you can have, we all know this in the hobby, the more stable your tank's going to be, the better things are going to do in the long run, because you're not going to be swinging as much. You're not going to swing temperature, you're not going to swing with your alkalinity and calcium nearly as quickly as you would if you're running a small tank like I have in the bedroom. Alright, now as far as equipment goes on the tank, I am running an 8-bulb T5 setup. What I did with this setup, it's a little retrofitted. What I did with the setup was pulled the 4 center T5 lights out along with the reflectors, and I mounted 2 Radion G3 fixtures on the inside. This way, I'm able to have that pop of the blue LEDs that I like at nighttime, but I'm also able to run 4 T5 bulbs for about 4.5 hours during the day to really give the corals what they need. They want that spectrum of light. Moving down in the tank, as far as water flow goes, the entire system's run off a DC 12,000. That's by Jabal, and it's been running for 2 years. I know there's some haters out there, but man, those pumps. I got 2 years on that thing already, and it's working great. The main flow in the tank is controlled controlled by a max spec gyre. That's the larger of the two units. I think it's the 350. I'm not sure on the model numbers, but it's there's two sizes. It's the larger of the two. And then what I have over here on the side of the tank, if I'm gonna have a party or people over, normally this will be removed. I won't have this here, but I wanted to show it to you guys today. I call this the detritus buster. When you're running a dual island setup in a peninsula style where you have the flow coming, down and over the islands as such, in the middle, detritus tends to build up over time. So I have this pump here basically on a weekly basis, and it runs for about an hour at a time, a day. It doesn't even run for much more than an hour, but what it does is it keeps the detritus that gets stuck in this center section suspended long enough that it can make it into the overflow down to the sump and get filtered out. Moving down from the tank, we have an extra large stand. I had the stand built extra large because I wanted to be able to fit every bit of equipment underneath this that I was intending on running. I have a 4-channel doser, which runs calcium, alkalinity, magnesium, and then I'm dosing Mark Eskenazi, Me Coral. I'm dosing his amino acids at 5 milliliters every other day through that 4th channel. As far as filtration goes, I'm running a Vertex skimmer. I'm running a Nature Reef denitrifier, which is amazing. I can't speak highly enough about the system. I don't want to say it's set it and forget it, but it's pretty darn maintenance free. You just need to make sure the flow inside the chamber stays and that they constantly have a food source. But it really does a tremendous job at keeping the nitrates at 0, the phosphate at almost indetectable levels. So that along with a small amount of ROAFOS in a fluidized chamber and a carbon. I run a little carbon in a fluidized chamber. All of these chambers run off of that DC 12,000. They all run off of a 2-inch manifold that comes off of the pump and is underneath the tank. I really like that setup. I told myself when I broke down my 90-gallon tank, I wouldn't have 15 maxi jets running lines all over the sump, and it looked basically like a spaghetti bowl. This is a much cleaner setup and solution. I highly recommend setting up a manifold for any future tank setup that you're possibly going to do. Not only is it efficient, it's going to keep your heat and temperature down, you're using less pumps and electricity, and you're still getting all the same flow that you would if you had 10 or 15, 1,200 maxi jets in your sump. So as far as this tank goes, that's about it equipment-wise. The sump is lit on a opposite schedule of the main system. So the sump comes on at nighttime. I keep a little bit of chaetomorpha in the sump. It fluctuates, but it doesn't really ever grow all that much. I would attribute that to the fact that I have such low nitrate and phosphate numbers. The entire system is running off an Apex controller. This thing has made my life so easy. It just keeps a steady lock on the pH and the temperature for me. It runs the pumps, so when my main pump shuts off, my skimmer shuts off. Everyone knows, if you don't have those times, you could have a messy skimmer if you have a power outage. And there's a whole bunch of things that this Apex does that I honestly take for granted now, because it's, once you have one, I think it's probably the most essential piece of a reef tank is stability. So having an auto top off and having a controller are my 2 most essential things, I would say, on top of having good lighting and good flow. If you have those 4 key pieces, you are going to be a successful reefer, because basically all we're doing here is mimicking the ocean. That's about it for the 80 Reef. The frag tank over here is actually running on the same water system. Like I said, this is plumbed off of one of those manifold outlets, and so this water volume actually runs through the whole main system that's in the frag tank. As far as flow goes in the frag tank, I'm running an MP10 by Ecotech, and I also have down on the very bottom another WP40, or I believe that's a WP25, I'm sorry. Jabal pump, and that runs again for about an hour every day. That's just to keep detritus suspended off the bottom of the tank. As far as lighting goes, I have a 4-bulb, 24-inch long fixture that I basically retrofitted to make a miniature version of the lights that I'm running on the 80. It has 2 AI nanos retrofitted to the center strip, and then 2 T5 bulbs running on the outside. I'm using ATI bulbs, Aqua Blue and Blue Plus. And this frag tank is lit for approximately 10 hours, 4 of those hours combined with the T5s. I think if I could give one piece of advice to a fellow reefer, I would have to say stability is key. Do whatever you possibly can to make your reef tank as stable as it possibly could be. That means temperature swings. That means water, salinity. So the bare minimum to have a successful reef, I think you should have a controller. I think you should have an auto top-off system. I don't think that those are 2 minimal expenses in this reef hobby, and they're 2 of the biggest things that are going to keep your tank and corals and fish happy. When you get more advanced, I say add a doser, because like I said, when things are automated, when things are stable, when things are very much on a routine, your tank runs so much better than it does when you're noticing, oh, the tank's low on water. Well, guess what? Your salinity just skyrocketed for a day or 2. You know, that's not good for the corals. It's not good for the fish. And not even that it might be detrimental to their health. They're not going to grow as fast as they possibly could. And that's the goal here. The goal here is we want these animals to be in the most pristine environment they possibly can be in, so that we can see them grow. Because nothing's more satisfying than growing something from a seed or a frag to a full, beautiful plant or colony. And that's my advice for you. All right, guys, thanks again for coming through my house, checking out my reefs and my tanks. My name is Matt Schmidt, DJ Skitty, hanging with my buddy Richard, aficionado, and we're on Reef2Reef. Have a good night.